This is one of two films about the safe use of camping stoves. This one is about meth stoves. Okay, so now we're going to look at how you assemble and use the Trangia stove safely. So let's open this one up. That to one side. If you're doing this in the field, it's really easy to lose the bits, so make sure you're organised, have a system. So this is one with the non-stick pan. Just like your non-stick pans at home, this one started to delaminate with use. There are pros and cons, but if you are doing a lot of frying, then maybe it's worth considering. Once again, we've got two pans. One of these is non-stick, and inside the second pan we've got the burner and the handle. So to assemble this, turn it the right way. Once again, we've got the pan stand with the three slots in the bottom. But first of all, let's look at the burner. So the burner has two parts. This part is designed to allow you to have some control over the size of the flame. It's called the simmer ring, and it opens and closes. And actually, with a bit of care, you can actually create a candle-sized flame. So you have got some control, but it's quite easy to burn your fingers as you're trying to change the size of it. So it does need a bit of care. And then the other part is the actual burner unit itself. And this one has actually still got fuel inside it. The lid screws on and it has a rubber seal inside, and provided that's in good condition, then it is possible to store fuel, some fuel in the burner. Personally, I tend to try to burn it out completely at the end of use, so that there's no risk of that fuel leaking out. The fuel it's toxic, it smells unpleasant, and if it gets into your rucksack, it's not nice really. Certainly you don't want it on your food. And so personally, I'd just take the precaution of trying to leave it empty if you can. You do need to look after that rubber seal, it's quite easy to damage it. Okay, so that just slots into place, like so. If we look at the use of the fuel bottle here, normally you would probably do this with the lid in place, with the top in place, but we'll just do it like this so we can see what's going on. Unscrew the bottle, hold the fuel bottle over the top, press the button, you can see that the fuel flows out, and we're aiming to fill it no more than 2/3 full. Sometimes it will be less. What you'll find is that as you're filling it, the level will gradually drop, and the reason for that is that the burner has a sort of storage well down here. Fuel goes in and then spreads out into that well, so it will drop down a little bit. But no more than round about 2/3 full is a good level. What you don't want is burning fuel spilling out of the stove, obviously. So, various ways we can light that. If I'm doing this outside, I would do it with the pan stand on for the additional wind resistance. Obviously I can use my striker as before. You could use one of these sort of kitchen lighters. The tricky thing with a Trangia is that because you're reaching down inside, if I just put this pan stand on, you'll see what I mean. Just twist that into place to lock it. Because you're reaching down inside, as it ignites, you know, it is easy to just singe your fingers a bit. So these long lighters solve that problem. You can reach inside and your fingers are completely clear. I haven't got any today, but if you can buy yourself those long matches, those longer Cook's matches, then that's another safe way to do it. Or of course you can use the striker that we used before. Just to demonstrate that, I will just lift the pan stand off for a moment, just to demonstrate the use of the striker. So imagine I've reached down inside that pan stand, get my striker the right way round, and send some sparks down into the burner. Usually takes 2 or 3 goes, but it does light really effectively, with this striker unit, this flint unit. To start with, you will hardly be able to see the flame. Now, we're doing this inside in artificial light, and from where I'm stood I can just about see it. In a minute we're going to have a look with a special camera, and you'll see that actually there's a lot of heat coming off this stove now, even though the flame is barely visible. Okay, so now we're going to look at refueling a transient stove in the field. When it's been used, then it might still be hot. So we need to be really careful about this. We're going to start off by taking the lid off and lifting the pan out. And what I would do next in the field is to just carefully hold my hand over the top, moving it down gradually, and just feeling if there's any heat coming off that stove. If it's dark or poor light, I might be able to see the flame if it's a light, but in any sort of sunlight you won't see it at all. So carefully making sure you don't burn yourself, holding your hand over the top, feeling for heat. As a rule of thumb, you want to leave the stove at least a minute after it's burnt out to cool down before you try to add any fuel. So I'm just going to lift the pan holder off so that you can see what I'm doing. But obviously normally you'd be doing this with the pan holder in place. So I want to be really sure that that burner is out, and so one possibility is just to hold a match and make sure it doesn't light. So I'm pretty confident now that's out, and if I very carefully, yep, I can check that's only just warm. So we're sure now that the stove isn't alight, and that's absolutely critical in terms of safety with these stoves. Where there have been accidents, it's tended to relate to people trying to add fuel to the stove thinking it was out when actually it wasn't. Once we're certain it's out, then just like before, using the proper fuel bottle, we unscrew it, hold it carefully over the top of the stove, press that button to allow some fuel to flow in, and fill it to a maximum of 2/3 full. And then we're ready to go. This footage shows what can happen when the wrong fuel bottle is used to refuel a burner that is still hot. The thermal imaging camera records the temperature of the flare at about 300 degrees centigrade, and the flame jets over 2 meters. Okay, so in summary, transient stoves, meth stoves are very good. They're very reliable. There's not very much that can go wrong with them. Occasionally the little holes around the rim of the burner can get a bit blocked up if you spill food. But they're easy to clean with something like a Brillo pad and possibly a little cocktail stick or something like that to clear the holes again. Very few moving parts, there's virtually nothing to go wrong, and so they're very reliable, and they have this sort of sealed unit that packs away as we saw a minute ago. There are some downsides. They're quite slow, so it does take a while to boil water. You may find, if you're using meths, that the pans get quite black, a little bit of smoke from the fuel, and so that can make them quite tricky to clean. Really helps to have something like a Brillo pad and some washing up liquid. They are silent, and obviously in some ways that's nice, but it is a safety consideration because people may not realise that they're alight, and as I mentioned before, the flame is very hard to see in any sort of sunlight, in any sort of natural light outside. But they are dead reliable, dead stable, simple to use, and generally very good stoves. So we've looked at some gas stoves, we've looked at some at the at the meths burners. They're all brilliant stoves, and basically if you use them carefully they are pretty safe, but they're safe in the context of any sort of cooking. So just like in the home, when you're cooking in your kitchen, it is possible to have accidents. You do need to be careful. Just the same with these, perhaps a little more so because you're using them in the field. Here are some top tips for using meth stoves. Make sure you use the correct fuel bottle with a safety valve. Make sure the burner is cooled before refueling. Leave it for at least a minute. Do not overfill the burner. Ensure the stove is stable. Ensure loose clothing and hair is tucked or tied out of the way. If you work in the education sector and need more information, contact your local outdoor education advisor or educational visits advisor. You can find contact details on the Outdoor Education Advisors Panel website. We'd like to thank Andy Dunham from Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Service and Vinnie Boardman from Dentro Media for all their help in producing this video.